it because of the part?
It's just the teeth.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
What a good-looking bunch of humans. Thanks for taking shelter from the rain. It's not too nice out there, is it? I'm Christa Wessel, the morning host at All Classical Portland, which is the #1 preset button on all your radios, right? 89.9? Yes? Okay. That was kind of a tepid round of applause. How about it for one of the best classical stations in the country, right here in Portland, community funded? That's better. It is my joy and my pleasure to occasionally get to chat with musicians of the Oregon Symphony during these pre-concert chats. And today, not only do I have a fantastic musician, but he's the Oregon Symphony's new associate conductor. His name is Norman Huynh. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
I hosted a couple of chats over the last few seasons with the prior associate conductor, Paul Kim. Paul Kim has moved on, and Norman is brand new. You've been here for just a couple of months, yeah?
Yeah, 2 months now.
Okay, so before we go any further, can you tell us what an associate conductor does?
Okay, so basically what I do, my main job is to step in should anything ever happen to one of the conductors, or if they drink one of my teas that I give them, or no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But I usually sit probably right back there during rehearsals and give feedback, balanced feedback to the conductor or conductors, and basically if I can hear the flute, in this case, if I can hear all 7 of the soloists in the concerto that we're playing tonight, or if it's Renee Fleming, if we can hear her, we definitely would like to hear her. And so that's one aspect of my job. The other is to actually conduct, so I do a lot of the family concerts, the youth education concerts, a lot of the specials. So next week is the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where we have the movie and the orchestra plays the live film score, so I'll be conducting that, and basically conducting and covering. But I think one of the things that I want to accomplish in my tenure here is to really go out into the community and be an extra face or an extra boot in the grounds for the Oregon Symphony.
So you mentioned your tenure. What is your tenure? How long will you be an associate conductor? Is it an open-ended thing?
So it's usually 2 years plus 1, so I can be here for 3 years. But they usually like to keep the door rotating for young conductors to get the opportunity to do something like this.
So let me ask, was it an audition process? Did they call you and say, Norman, we've heard great things, will you come be our associate? Like, what is the process of getting a job like this?
So the process is, I sit on my computer and make a conducting video of myself, and I apply to the Oregon Symphony. So there was a job announcement, very typical.
Wait, step back.
Okay.
You're at your computer and you make a conducting video. Are you like literally conducting in the air?
Oh, I have videos of me conducting from the orchestra's point of view. So
Gotcha.
If I ever do a concert, you might see a camera back there or something. So I make the best clips out of that, and I send in my videotape, my resume, and maybe a cover letter, and that's round 1. So they cut, I think this one was 100 applicants, and they cut us down to 6. And then they invited 6 of us to come, and there are 2 rounds. The first round is with the orchestra, so you get like 15 minutes to show them what you got. And then after that, you go off to lunch, and then they call you, and they invited back 3 for the second round. And in that second round, I think we had 35 minutes with the orchestra, and Carlos was like, do this piece, and don't rehearse. And so I did that piece, and then, okay, now I want you to rehearse the Brahms 3rd Symphony. And so we had to rehearse, and then after that, we had to imagine that there was 2 settings. One, a setting of a pops crowd, and talking to them after we conducted a piece. And the second, imagining that there's a hall full of 4th and 5th graders, and conducting a piece and turning around and be like, good morning, everyone. Just sort of changing up to see how you are from the podium. And then
so
interview.
It wasn't all sitting in your videos and Carlos saying, oh yes, he's got a good It was way more
Yeah, well, that's the first initial sort of cutoff is there's a committee of musicians, some staff, Carlos, and they sift through all these videos, and that's the sort of the first impression you have to make. So if you have a video of Mahler 2, the ending, that's always a good thing. But usually you want to start with something energetic and to hopefully stick.
And do you have any idea how much of the decision is based on Carlos's preference versus what the orchestra, because you spend time in front of the orchestra too. Do they get to make feedback?
They do. They all have this sheet, and it's like, conductor was clear, 1 through 10. Conductor fixed intonation, 1 through 10. Was rehearsed efficiently, 1 through 10. So they have all their ballots, but ultimately the choice is Carlos's.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here. And you said your first, well, no, I shouldn't, it's not your first, because you've already been on the podium a couple of times, right?
Yeah, once for the Waterfront and once for Boys to Men. And it's funny because my first concert on the stage was with Boys to Men. It was sold out. The next concert I'm doing is Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's sold out. So I can put in my bio for now, 100% of Norman's concerts are sold out. That's a good marketing thing, right?
Well, let me ask you a little bit about your history. Were you conducting someplace before you won this job?
Yes. So I was in a place called Portland, Maine. They would say the original Portland. I think you guys say the other Portland. And yes, I do know the story of how Portland was named. That's probably the question do you know the story of how Portland was named? And usually I'm like, no, why don't you tell me?
And so you were the
assistant conductor.
Assistant.
Same role, but this orchestra was a $3 million annual budget per year. So usually you climb the ladder and get the next bigger orchestra, and so this one is about 17 million is our annual budget. So just more concerts.
And you said too that you were assistant conductor in was it the Portland Symphony?
Portland Symphony, yeah.
And you're associate conductor here. Are there different levels?
Yeah, kind of. It's like you start with assistant conductor, and then it moves up to associate conductor. And usually after associate conductor, it's resident conductor, and the ultimate job is the music director role, or principal conductor of a series. Like Jeff Tyzik is principal Pops conductor.
So do you then have your eyes on a particular job?
I think so.
What's your dream job?
Well, like New York Phil music director or something like that. That's, I think that's all of our, but I think for me, I just want to be in a place where the orchestra wants to make great music, an organization that is, that relates to the community really well. So that's really making a difference in the community.
You mentioned that a few minutes ago, that part of your mission in your position as associate conductor was that you really wanted to connect with the community. So you get to do that in Pops concerts and kids concerts for sure. What's your background? What's your educational background, your music degree?
So I went to grad school. So before I moved to Portland, Maine, I was in Baltimore at the Peabody Institute, studying conducting, getting a master's. And before that, I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So Roll Tide for anybody that knows about football, college football. But I was there getting my degree in music education. So I had a lot of experience with kids. And in high school, I worked a summer job at a summer camp with little 5-year-olds every year, 20 of them in my group.
So you have actually taught kids music?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, then it's going to be a natural fit for you doing these kids concerts, family concerts.
They're so much fun. I just love the enthusiasm of those concerts.
And there's one of those coming up too, right?
Youth concert, yes, there's a family concert coming up next Sunday. So if you have any kids or grandkids or friends with kids, bring them along.
And they're so much fun. There's usually a theme and a narrator, an actor. It's a really good, warm time.
The best hits of the orchestra for kids. It's such a great. No piece on the program is longer than 6 or 5 minutes, and it's very engaging. The kids are dancing and sort of interacting with everything.
Okay, so I want to step backward in time now. So you mentioned you had your undergrad in music education.
Yes.
And then that was not satisfying enough. You wanted to go do graduate work in conducting. Tell me about that switch from music education to conducting. How does that happen?
So I was on track to be a high school band director. That was like, I wanted to be the best high school band director in the world. And I had always had this fascination of conducting, and I knew I wanted to go into some sort of conducting, but I really wasn't exposed to orchestral music until my freshman year in college. Being from the South, everything is band and marching band. And so I don't think I'd heard Beethoven's Fifth Symphony other than the first opening chords until I started studying conducting in my sophomore year in college. And so once I started studying conducting with my conducting teacher, he introduced me into orchestral music, and then that sort of just got the ball rolling.
So it was actually the revelation of orchestral music that inspired you to become a conductor, if I'm hearing you right.
Exactly, an orchestral conductor.
Okay, so I'm going to ask some dumb questions.
There's no doubt.
And we might have time at the end of this, too. If you have questions about what a conductor does or what Norman does in his role as associate conductor, be thinking about those. We may have some time to take audience questions at the end. My dumb question is, how do you study conducting? Are you just standing in a room doing this? What do you do? What's the course of study?
There are a lot of many different approaches. So what I did is that my teacher made me draw these patterns, conducting patterns. So we had to have a graph sheet of paper and a 4/4 pattern. We had to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you just learn all the patterns. And then you learn score study, and
Which means what exactly?
which basically means opening up a piece of music and diagnosing it and taking it apart, looking at the big picture, zoom in really into the details, and then coming back out to see everything again. So that's sort of how one delves in the conducting. And then you just do it a lot and have someone give you feedback on the physical gestures that you're doing.
So when your colleagues say, because you were an instrumentalist, Norman played the euphonium, which is thrilling to me. We don't have very many brass playing conductors in the world, right? So, whereas your colleagues then were going off to take their private lessons in euphonium playing or having a music theory class or something like that, what were you doing then? Were you like standing in a room by yourself practicing, or did you get the benefit of
sort of everything? I took private lessons on euphonium every week, and then went every week to study conducting and all the theory stuff. That it's sort of this just like bubble of music that you're in for 4 to 6 years, and whenever you're studying music. But yeah, it's just one thing that they always tell you is you should get really good at an instrument, so the struggles of practicing and how to make something better, how to make music better. Because if you can't do it on your instrument, then you can't translate. How are you going to tell, 70 professionals how to make something better? So you have to master one thing first, and then you can take that and develop that in the conducting part.
Okay, another uninformed question. It seems to me that there was an era long ago, and maybe I'm incorrect here, where the world's best conductors didn't go to grad school to get a conducting degree, that they were just great violinists who then started conducting. Is like studying conducting kind of a new thing or an American thing? Or?
I would say it's kind of new. I mean, conducting is a sort of a newer art form, and it started with Mendelssohn and Wagner, so it's not, in the 1800s. Really, like the craft of conducting. I mean, there were people, Kapellmeisters, stomping their staves to keep the beat. But what was the question?
Was studying conducting a new thing? Like,
okay.
I'm imagining, did Herbert
right.
Baron Karajan go to conducting school?
I see. Yeah, mostly it's just, I don't think so, but there is always a tutelage. So you have, I think Bernstein studied with Fritz Reiner, and then that goes back to back. And so there's this, if you can always trace a lineage to go back. I mean, these old school conductors were really good at their instrument. So that's just that example of transferring.
And you mentioned lineage, and you mentioned Bernstein. One of Bernstein's pupils was Marin Alsop, who was one of your teachers as well?
At Peabody. Yep. So my teachers at Peabody were Marin Alsop, who studied with Bernstein at Tanglewood, and also studied with Gustav Meyer, who was the head teacher at Peabody, who was teaching alongside Bernstein at Tanglewood. So it was just this, you can trace it back to Beethoven, I think, eventually. Yeah, which is kind of
Very
cool,
cool,
right?
yeah.
Great-great-great-great-grandfather in music.
So tell me, from your personal perspective, what do you love most about being on this podium? I imagine for some conductors it's all about the glory and the power of being in the spotlight, you know. For others it's like transforming, like bringing the notes on the page to life through the instruments. What got you into it? What do you love about it?
For me, there's this moment every time that I strive for in conducting, this moment during a piece when sort of everything clicks. And you can see it on the musicians' faces, you can hear it, and people are just making, it's not the conductor making the musicians play something or do a certain thing. It's this moment of collaboration where it's just 70 people transcend each other and form this one wall of sound that's going to the audience. And when the audience is really engaged too, you can just feel that moment or those moments in a concert. And those are the moments that I sort of live by. I mean, the glory and stuff, that's all like extra stuff that I don't think about too much, but I think I love working with people and being sort of a collaborator.
I was noticing on my way in to the stage door, talking about glory, there's a giant picture of Norman Huynh on the wall,
so
on
weird.
Sam. I know, is it weird?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and it's giant. It's big.
Huge, yeah. I mean, I think my lips were chapped that day, and I can see that my lips were chapped in that picture. I'd never noticed before, but it was a little weird.
Okay, let's walk it back again. Your education. So actually, you just came from the Oregon Symphony in Maine, where you were their assistant conductor.
For 3 seasons.
Before, was that your first job, or did you have one?
First job.
Nice.
Yeah.
So right out of grad school at Peabody. Before Peabody and their conducting degree, you were a music education major in Alabama. Is that where you were born and raised?
Montgomery, Alabama, yes.
You hide the accent very well, sir.
I do. That's the number 2 thing people usually say to me when they find out I'm from Alabama. Oh, you don't sound like you're from Alabama. So I try to. Could you imagine a conductor talking like this?
I would love it. Before I moved here, I worked at a radio station in North Carolina, where a number of the hosts had a Southern accent, and it was rather charming, although it is a little bit jarring to hear, that was the Symphony No. 1 by Beethoven.
Yeah.
It's really sweet.
Mozart, you know. It's fun. I mean, I love the accent. It's very charming. It comes back a little bit when I talk to friends from down there or go back. I mean, you can call me when I'm home, and you can hear it a little bit.
I would love to hear that.
I'll be home in December. So.
Okay, good. Well, when you come back, we'll touch base. So born and raised in Alabama, euphonium we mentioned. So how does somebody find the euphonium? Were you a trombone player first?
I was. It's like you knew this already. No,
I think most euphonium players don't start with euphonium.
That's
it's
true.
kind of
That's true. It's either
like a mini
trumpet,
tuba.
right? It's like trumpet or trombone that makes the switch. I mean, usually, so if you don't know what the euphonium is, it's basically the other name for it is a baritone, and it's in between. It's an octave higher than the tuba. So if it plays low, it sounds like a tuba. If it plays high, it sounds like a French horn. It's that middle mellow sound. I started on trombone and got to high school, and because I was in a small high school band, we didn't have any marching baritones in the marching band, and so my band director, I sort of was enthusiastic Norman and was like, I'll do it, and so I picked up the baritone, and that switched, well, Norman, do you want to play euphonium for concert band? I was like, sure, and then a really great teacher of mine at the University of Alabama, my band director told me I should study euphonium with him, and so I just kept it going.
I also love that you mentioned marching band. That was a really big part of my life. I wonder how many orchestral musicians spent any time in marching band.
Maybe Bernstein? No, I'm just kidding. No, he didn't. No. Yeah, I did marching band all throughout high school, and for 3 years at the University of Alabama, I did marching band we call it the $1 Million Band out there, and I loved it. It's an easy way to make friends, and it's a different experience. You know, it makes you a little more rounder person.
Well, it's physically difficult
It is.
too to be moving fast from point A to point B, playing the music and
Memorizing it, yeah, and it's all in the shoulder. I mean, if you can, and I marched. You never see this, a marching euphonium. I mean, it's a huge instrument, and you're carrying
Up on your shoulder?
No, straight like this. So you're carrying 14 pounds in front of you for 30 minutes, so it's just, or 15 minutes, and so I had good muscles back in college.
Well, I'm sure you do now, too, with the...
Right, yeah, with the conducting. Yeah, a little bit.
This is a weird question. Is there anything you can apply from your time in marching band to what you're doing now as a conductor? And I should ask, too, were you ever drum major in marching band? Because that's like the next step.
Oh, right. Yeah, because I played a low brass instrument, I could never be a drum major because they would lose a strong low brass player in the band, and they didn't want to do that. So it was usually like a woodwind player that got the drum major spot.
They could easily miss another flute.
And if I ever go back home, I'm going to can I conduct the fight song now? I conduct.
You've conducted sold-out concerts at the Oregon Symphony.
Right, exactly.
Let me conduct the marching band.
Yeah. So I don't know if anything could be it's a little different. I don't know if I could transfer anything from that to orchestral playing. I mean, maybe we can apply a whistle to get the tempo right at the beginning. That'll be tweet, 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 tweet. Yeah, and then there won't be any problems starting a piece.
Marching band people in the audience today?
Anybody did marching band?
Few.
Nice.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Good. It was such a warm part of my past.
It's
just
great.
that
I
sense
loved
of
it.
family.
Yeah.
And playing in an orchestra too. I feel like, though not obviously as physically active, there's something about that family.
That's
you're all
true.
making something together.
Yeah, the teamwork. I mean, it's all about teamwork and being one unit. So that is transfer.
Okay, I'm going to go way back to the beginning now, and maybe then we'll take some questions if we have time. So you mentioned before euphonium you were a trombone player. How did you pick trombone? Are your parents musical? What's the family background?
No, both my parents own restaurants. My mom's from Taiwan. My father is a refugee from Vietnam, and so I didn't grow up in a musical family. I joined band in middle school, 7th grade. Started on French horn, was terrible at it. Terrible, asked to switch to trombone, and after I switched to trombone,
You asked, not that you were asked.
No. That was good. I kept begging the band director. I was like, please let me switch to trombone, because my cousin played trombone in band and brought it home a couple years before, and I just remember it being really fun. French horn was not fun. And so he said, okay, spring break, you have a week, go learn trombone. And so I came back and sort of got all 4 of my medals on tryout pass-off day in that one day, and it just came, low brass came easier for me than French horn. French horn's such a hard instrument, especially when you're learning it for the first time.
This is why I no longer do it for, anybody in public, really. For those of you who come in, this is the Oregon Symphony's new associate conductor, Norman Huynh. And if you have questions about conducting or behind-the-scenes stuff with the Oregon Symphony or Alabama Marching Band, I'd be happy to take your questions in the last few minutes that we have here. Oh, I've got one way back here. Okay, hang on one second, Norman. I'm going to pass the microphone.
I know. There's a huge game going on right now. But it's halftime, so that's good.
Which piece or pieces did you submit for your audition when you were conducting?
Good question. What piece or pieces did I submit for my audition? So mine was I opened with the last half of the last movement of Bruckner's 7th Symphony. It's a huge piece. Yeah, I did it in Manhattan School of Music. And then that was about 3 minutes, and then it moved to me being in a Harry Potter costume conducting the Harry Potter, Hedwig's theme from Harry Potter, because I wanted them to know that I had some experience in that, and then Dvorak's 8th Symphony, the last movement. So those are all very exciting pieces, as you would imagine.
I would imagine the Harry Potter costume, they were like, let's hire that guy.
That's it. That was that's what I was thinking.
Maybe one more question?
I think we had one, this gentleman over here. No? Right back.
question was about Norman's and continuation of playing euphonium here in Portland.
I could, but that might turn people off to music. When I was in Maine, I did a community band for about a year, and that was fun. I don't have time to practice anymore, so it's, but it's a beautiful instrument. I love it so much. It's so lyrical.
If you're willing, would you stick around and take a couple other questions for folks who might want to meet you afterwards? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We have to wrap up now so that the musicians have a chance to warm up before tonight's concert. But thank you for coming. This is a great guy, and you've come to the Raiders of the Lost Ark on Thursday.
Next Thursday, and then
kids'
the
concert
Frozen Fairy Tales next Sunday.
You'll see him on the podium. This is Norman Huynh, the Oregon Symphony's new associate conductor.
Thank you.
Thank you.